discussing art history with Abelard and Joe.
Hey Joe, how's it going?
It's pretty good. My hair is like really taut today. I don't know what I did. I slept funny, I think.
You kind of look like Bart Simpson,
No,
but in a nice way, in a good
it's
way.
like that the guy from the fighting game with the
Guile?
yeah.
You look more like Guile than like Bart Simpson.
What kind of face? He'd be like
Yeah,
er,
yeah.
er,
Sonic boom.
Sonic boom. Okay,
Yeah, that's exactly what Guile looks like and says.
great.
Yeah. I was just thinking about, I went to go see Matt's show, his concert.
Oh yeah, how is it?
It was good. It was rock and roll Matt, not musical theater Matt. So he was doing like toward the end he did a stage dive and everybody carried him around, you know?
Oh, that's so brave. I don't think I could ever do that.
Yeah, can you imagine? You really have to trust the audience. But I was watching him get, carried around and then go back to the stage and I thought like, wow, I wish other kinds of artists got to do a stage dive.
Do you want to do a stage dive someday? Is that what you're saying, Evelyn? You want you know
Like what if I finished a painting and then I went, oh, you know?
be great, but painting is a private act.
That's
No
the
one can
problem.
see you when you're painting. This has been, people every so often someone tries to make a movie about a famous painter, and it always fails because the important part of painting happens when you're alone.
Yeah, no amount of like emotional music over a montage. A painting you don't see, like maybe you see a close up of a brush applying paint to canvas, but you're right, they don't
Yeah.
really
They'd be like, here's Abelard having that great idea while he's showering.
some Hans Zimmer shit.
Soaping up his hair, smoothing it down. This is when it happened. This is when the magic happened. The greatest work of art was conceived.
Yeah,
You're
not
like
gonna show it
humming
on
a little
camera.
tune. You can't see it on camera.
Yeah,
The most you
you
can
only
do
see the
is
audience going down. Oh,
you can always try to revolve the camera around your,
yeah,
like a on a drone or something
like when
to,
somebody in a Steven Spielberg sees an alien.
yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of, that's, I mean, and of course, there's always the hackers strategy where you sort of
You go into a palace of light.
yeah, you go into the light palace or you superimpose some like equations that kind of float around your brain. That would be great. We need to somebody needs to invent that holographically for real life so people know when you or I are thinking hard so they can be impressed.
So I'm like thinking like this, and then a bunch of like cones are rotating and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that
you
would be
have to be
awesome.
careful not to think about anything embarrassing.
I'm thinking about cones 100% of the
Well, of course, sorry. I should have
time.
known.
I'm cone
That's
mode.
that's true. That's true. You don't think of anything embarrassing. To be a little curled up kitty just floating around.
Speaking of artists who deserve a stage dive.
Ah, yeah, good transition.
Okay.
Shall we hop right in? I'm gonna go
Yeah,
get ready. Rev up the electric
yeah.
guitars, folks.
Wow.
Oh
That's right.
yeah,
You didn't know we were doing Berserk today, but we're doing Berserk. Kentaro Miura, baby.
it's some pretty good wild stuff. So,
Yeah.
confession to make is that me and Abelard just started reading this. We're about a volume and a half in.
Yep.
We got it from the library. And note
Yeah.
to any Chicago Public Library administrators or librarians who might be watching this, order some more copies of
Few more.
Berserk.
Few
Get
more
a
of those
couple more.
nice big deluxe editions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone's reading them. We've
Yeah.
been working on this for quite some time. It takes so long to get the books.
But I think we both had this experience, but every few panels, I've never had this with any other comic, even my favorites, but every few panels I see something that I think, I need to text this to Joe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost impossible because every page something rad is happening. I'm
Yeah.
enjoying it so much. I didn't think it would be as good as it is in many different ways.
Yeah, it's astonishing. Let us just, I know sometimes if stuff, this is how I feel if something is too praised, it starts to feel like homework. So we'll leave it alone, but basically, you will love reading Berserk. It's so awesome.
Yep.
This is an awesome page. We've picked out a few pages. All of these are from volume two. There aren't really any spoilers insofar as it's kind of, hard to spoil. But here are some things that happen. Oh, this is volume one. Anyway, so yeah, just a couple of different pages. This is a skeleton fight.
Yeah, one thing that is true of everything that we're showing you is that we picked out these images, but we could have picked out every other page
Yeah.
of each of these sequences because it's all bangers. They're all good.
We agreed beforehand that we're not going to spend the whole episode gushing. So we'll just say
Yeah,
now,
that's my last. No more praise.
this is
Only
astonishing.
cold-hearted analysis. Cold as the enormous sword
Yeah.
that you can see right here.
Let's talk about that sword a little bit.
Yes, let's. Is this the biggest sword that's ever been portrayed in fiction?
Good question. Well, the other iconic, really, really big sword is Cloud's sword from Final Fantasy VII, which I think is wider but shorter.
And does that's after this, right?
Yeah, by a lot. So 1997 versus I think this is like mid 80s.
Yeah.
But who else? Yeah, I would love to see a deep study of enormous swords in fiction. Um, the way this sword, and I think it's interesting because Final Fantasy VII, Cloud's just swinging that thing around like it's nothing. In this, you can even see it in these panels. This main character is named Guts. The when Guts swings the sword, it looks like he is swinging something with that much weight. He can't just flick it around. He has to put his whole body into it. Almost every panel where he swings it, you can see what he's doing with the weight of his body to let him move it. In this case, right, he's doing this the on the right side, and these are non-reversed, so we're reading right to left here. On the right side, he's swinging it from the ground up in this arc that's followed by all of the skeleton parts, right? And then in to the left, it's like hanging in midair and he's preparing to like drop it down using its own weight.
Yeah. The one of the things to notice, and he does this throughout the book, is that the way the sword is drawn changes. So there is a totally clean, like clean edge, the sort of texture in the center of it there in the left hand side image is very exacting and still in comparison to on the right hand side, the sword is in motion in that image. And so you can see that the details are conveyed purely through, like, there's no hard lines at the edges, it's all motion lines. So it gives you this feeling of time, you can tell that in the right hand image, the sword is in motion. And then when we move to the next big image on the left, the sword is poised at the apex of its swipe. For a
Yeah.
moment, it is still.
And Guts is in motion, right?
Yeah.
But the focus is the sword, which makes that left panel seem like it's just like a paused instant. But
Hmm.
you can see from Guts's cloak, which is being drawn in the same way, like solely with action lines pointing in the direction of travel. Like you can almost see it moving. You can tell that he's moving at speed, getting ready to swing again.
Yeah. It's really so I picked I wanted to look at this particular spread of pages because this is the way this is carving up the page through panels in a way that is I think more typical of manga than it is of like American comics, which tend generally to be you're shaking your head like this isn't true. I
Yeah.
feel like it's more typical for American comics to adhere to more of a grid with their panels. Do you
Uh,
disagree?
Disagree a little bit. There are definitely American and or generally Western cartoonists who are a little more like experimental with their panel layouts. I don't usually see it as employed as successfully here, right? where
Hmm.
ultimately, right, this is not that wild of a layout. There are some small refinements, like a lot of the panels are wider at the top than at the bottom. They sort of converge down.
I think they're echoing the shape of the sword.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's got this sort of like parallelogram shape that's happening here.
But I think that this is really exceptional in terms of using these extra panel placements to affect and to create like an overall sense of momentum and timing.
Yes. So we were gonna, one thing that like I want to make sure to mention it because you can't see the break in the pages. This is a spread.
Yeah,
This is a full page, like 2 pages. And side note, a frequent irritation that I have whenever I try to read comics, like on the computer, is that a lot of the comics readers will not show you the images in a full spread. It'll only be page by page. You can't read a comic that way.
yeah.
That's crazy. The
You need the
guys,
double
you
page
need the
spread.
double page. Look at how this is designed for the double page spread. The composition is just like singing on these 2 pages together. It's incredible. The little lines and the match up. Oh man. Anyway, so that said, like keep in mind that there's a page break in between these two things, and I think that the way that the panels are like overlapping each other as time passes,
Yeah,
like you sort of have this upwards step from big like portrait of skeleton slaughter to the next little cutout, and but the cutouts are doing different things. So your first cutout image after the big skeleton slash is like it's like almost a reverse shot where you're seeing those bones that got cut up fly off
yeah,
away from you. It's like this is the cat's eye view.
yeah.
And then you have a cut back almost to like, okay, well here's what he's doing next. And then on the far left hand side, you have two images here, and the one on the top, we were discussing this. We're not quite, this one's a little like foggier. I think it's just like what Guts would be seeing as he
Yeah.
moves to make his next strike.
You're seeing the bones land from where they flew up in the air. You're seeing them land, and then you're seeing more skeletons coming his way.
Yeah. And then down in the bottommost left hand corner, you have my least favorite character from the series,
Yeah.
the dumb little fairy. But
I think he has redeeming qualities and serves a role that's necessary in the story, but I understand not really wanting him to be around.
yeah,
It's really crazy that he's drawn like that.
it
There are
is.
other characters, whenever you meet a child, usually they're drawn this way. And we'll see later on that in this series, the way people are drawn pivots from this kind of like very, very like almost chibi stylization to a very observed, like shadowed masses style of drawing a face.
Yeah. I mean, I like him in this particular spread because A, he's not saying anything.
Yeah,
And B, it's like, it's great because he's like, oh, which is what I'm doing.
yeah.
So that's cool.
That's his role. He looks at Guts doing the craziest stuff in the world. Doesn't talk a lot. He doesn't express his feeling. And then the fairy, Puck, looks at it and says, "This is the craziest shit I ever saw."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, the different ways of depicting things in the same in the not even like in this one image, in this one moment where everything's happening at the same time. Check out all of the different ways the forms and the figures are handled. So you've got the real like very very simple like manga style little fairy at the bottom, and then you have the skeletons who are just like got lots of little gross little like textures and stuff on
Yeah.
them, just the way you would want to have
Filthy and
skeleton.
grimy, as though they have like moss and muck clinging to them.
Yeah, you can like smell the gross stuff.
Yeah.
It's so good. And then you have the way that Guts is drawn in the shadow in the left hand page where it's just line work, and it's so good. It's so expressive. having his face completely blacked out, except
Yeah,
for a little bit of light shining in his eye, you don't need to see his face there because you know he's just like yeah, my emotion right now is skeleton death.
yeah. He's if you just looking at the juxtaposition of like the face, the cloak, and the arm, they're all kind of drawn in three different ways. I think it's gorgeous.
It's really great to make stuff like this work. It's really free and it's a really good reminder that like having a defined style isn't everything. Like
Yeah,
you can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want on the same page.
yeah,
If it's like everything is working together still. You've got this like storyline or this motion to carry you through. It doesn't matter that you draw in this consistent style every time. You can use all of this stuff to help tell the story that you're telling.
yeah. Well, I would say that this is consistent, but it's consistent in the context of a larger whole.
Hmm.
It's not a slavish consistency to one way of drawing a face. It's the whole work is consistent with itself.
Yeah, consistently awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oops, we said we weren't going to praise it
Okay,
anymore. Okay, we
next
better head
one.
on to the next one.
Yeah, only fearless analysis and exploration from here
So
on
what
out.
I come here
God
for.
damn, real skeletons get slaughtered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So why is this still exciting to read? What's getting done here that keeps this from being super dull?
Okay. I love this sequence and I think about it all the time. One of the things that is great about it is that here's the thing, like, so comics is both like, it's both making an incredible image, but it's also storytelling. Not that a regular like illustration isn't storytelling, but you've got a lot more to work with in a comic because you
Yeah,
work with time and characters and voices and stuff. And the characterization of these two guys is so much fun. You have your dumb ass aristocrat, Count Julius,
yeah.
and you hate him right away. The first time you meet him, he does some stupid stuff and he's awful and he's stuck up and he's an idiot. And so the satisfaction of watching him like get his eventually is great. And this whole sequence here is there's like multiple things going on. It's not just, two guys talking in a corridor about plot stuff. It's about how Count Julius is an imbecile throughout the whole.
It's impossible to use innuendo on him because he doesn't understand.
He doesn't get it, but he is angry,
Yeah.
and you can tell because of the messed up faces he makes.
Yeah.
So that part is great. Because it's always fun to like hate somebody as you're reading. Um, And the other thing that is making this fascinating is the way that basically, like, I think, and I don't know if this is correct or not, but people like to talk about comics and like with the film vocabulary.
Okay. Yeah.
No, maybe
I don't
that's
think
fine,
that's so
but
bad.
like the camera, essentially, like your viewpoint,
Mhm.
is moving around all the time here. You're up above them. You're
Yeah.
looking up at him. You see in one of the first images that Count Julius is much taller. So some of these drawings are explicitly from his point of view. And most importantly, and at the key moment of this whole interaction, which is taking place in the like upper left hand panel right here, right next to me. I think this is so like brilliant, this moment, because it's like, okay, the little advisor is like, how can I get through to you?
Yeah.
I'm just going to have to come out and say you should have this man killed. And the moment where he turns his head to look right
I
into your
love the way they
eyes,
draw his face. I can't believe it.
it's so good.
Yeah.
He's looking right out at you, the reader of the comic, but
Yeah.
implied and very clearly, like you can tell what's going on here. You can tell he's like looking up, and the sunlight is hitting you know, his face at this moment. He's looking right up at Count Julius, and then finally he figures it out, and his eyes get very big,
Yeah.
and the shadow of the contemplation of dishonorable deeds falls across his face. It's so good.
There's one thing that I think is interesting. You talked about the different shots here. The camera's sort of pivoting around. it does something that is like a rule in comics you're not supposed to do is break the 180-degree rule, right? So top
So we
right
should
panel to top left
explain
panel.
what that is very explicitly.
So if from our perspective in the very top right panel, we're the camera, quote unquote, would have to pivot 180 degrees to be looking at Count Julius in the next panel over, right?
Hmm.
Which is why he seems to be facing the opposite way. The trouble with doing this is that in a comic that's not as well composed as this, you break continuity and it's harder to tell what we're supposed to be looking at, right? If you have
Right.
a group of people and you break this rule, it can really mess with your ability to perceive continuity. But
It's a film thing, and
yeah,
I think I want to talk a little bit more explicitly about the way this functions. It's like an editing thing. So you have, if you imagine between me and Abelard here, that there is a line connecting us. If you you can shoot this picture of us from various angles where like I'm more in the foreground or Abelard's more in the foreground. But if you take the camera and you like swivel it around
if it
so
went all the way around, it would look like this. Yeah,
then if you jump cut to this, people are gonna be like, "What happened?
yeah,
Who am I looking at? Who's talking?"
yeah.
What? And it's even if you do this, even if you have like recognizable professional actors on screen and you know who they are, it's incredibly disorienting.
Yeah.
So it's just this rule that you like, really aren't supposed to break because it makes things confusing for the reader or the watcher of the film. And like all rules, if you're really good, you can do what you want.
If you're built different.
You can just like you can break that. I mean, it's fine. Like, can I still tell what's going on? Then good. And here we can't.
I think the other piece of this is that it's using a rhythm that's also we can think of as filmic, which is like shot reverse shot, which is one character's perspective, the other character's perspective alternating, which is what's going on in the top three panels there that helps ground you in what's happening. There's also a rhythm of point of view pulls in, point of view pulls out, right? So in the bottom right hand panel, we get more of a view of the environment, then we come back in. We get a view of the river and the bridge that the little minister vizier guy is looking at. But then when we're at the moment of greatest intensity, we zoom completely in and the backgrounds disappear. Things are so intense that they can't perceive the world anymore. They're totally consumed by what they're thinking about.
Yeah. You know what I think, Abelard?
But
I think comics is the most advanced and difficult of all of the arts.
wow,
I think if you lined up all of the arts in a row, I think you got to put comics on the top.
wow,
I mean, because like think of all of not only do you have all of the concerns of writing and like all of the concerns of a film, like things happen over time, but you gotta draw every single one of these guys
yeah.
again and again and again. It's just a lot of work. I don't know, like if you think there's a harder one, I'd like to know what it is so I can avoid it.
Well, with architecture, it's expensive and it can fall down if you don't do it.
I mean, I suppose that's true, but everything's you get a lot of people to help though, right?
Yeah, you could get a lot of people to. This isn't a fruitful conversation, but
Oh,
well, it's one of those. How are we going to make a conclusive statement here, right?
no, I think we can just have opinions. Wild opinions.
Wild opinions, the
Yeah.
order of the day, comics, the hardest art form and most worthy.
Yep.
Ready to look at one more?
Yeah, that'll go get it.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Listener, viewer, what do you think is the most valuable and difficult form of art? Write in.
I'm gonna scooch this guy out for a second. We'll come back to him.
Is it dance music? Is it
Breakdancing, the
gymnastics?
highest form of art ever
Yeah, breakdancing.
invented.
Is it breakdancing?
Breakdancing is so cool. I'm really into it. I won't ever do it though, I promise.
You could
No,
breakdance.
I can't. They don't. I
They don't
can't.
let people like us in there.
I've yeah, I don't have any rhythm. They wouldn't let me in.
So this, you might have been distracted from our little conversation by the image on screen. What's this guy's name?
Nosferatu Zod.
Yeah, this is Nosferatu Zod. Um,
Yep.
so This is just pure ink drawing. There isn't a story being told here. It's just a giant double page splash.
It's just really good. We couldn't help but put this up because it's so good.
There are just going to be things, if you read this comic or if you have read it, there are going to be things in it that just totally dazzle you.
Yeah, make sure you have a friend nearby so you can show them the best pages.
The things that are getting done with ink here, the that it's tracing the curvature and texture of these horns, the texture of the fur, deep wells of shadow that the textures done by hatching lines like bleed into, like the ever more shadowed curve of his back in the top right corner,
Mhm.
the drawing of the face, the pure like forms stacked on forms, of the expressiveness of it.
Yeah, look at the way, if you go to the right of his big horn, look at the way the ink lines get curvy because that's fur. But it also has this like energy like effect as though he's vibrating in space.
Look at the little spotlight on the bottom curve of the right horn. You got to be a real one to put that light there.
It's really good. I like his quietly lit eyes. The one spot where there's some what's it called? The like
Zip it time.
zipatone um in there. Just like delicate, just using that little bit of different handling to like make the special part of the face stand out from everything else.
And then that the white pupil in the middle, I think is like scratched away with a razor blade or something like that.
Yeah, like so if you're doing the tone traditionally, which I imagine this was done that way. This is a incredibly crazy painstaking process where you do your drawing and then you cut the zipatone, which comes on like some weird transparent paper. You cut it out in the shape you need with a razor and you glue it on to your art with a separate like little pot of glue that you've got, I guess. And then you can scrape away the part you don't need because you can't, of course, you couldn't cut it exactly to the right shape very easily. But then you can also scrape away inside to put highlights. So you get these really organic, like mark making possibilities, and that's really cool. I don't think anyone uses real zipatone anymore. Maybe some like freaks do because it's
Freaks
extremely,
affectionately.
yes, of course. It's extremely labor intensive, but it does look really beautiful. I think most of the time when you see it nowadays, it's done digitally.
Yeah.
But let's
What does this guy like to do? Nosferatu I mean, can we see some of his stuff that he likes to do in
what
the next panel?
likes to do is he likes to have a huge battle.
He lives for battle.
He loves to destroy dudes.
Yeah.
But he doesn't just want to destroy, you know, just your cannon fodder. He
Yeah.
wants a good fight.
Yeah.
He's actually fairly admirable, and because he just loves to fight.
Yeah, he's the classic guy in a comic like this who's mostly looking for a worthy opponent and who's so excited to see somebody like Guts and his friend with long white hair, Griffith.
Yeah,
Uh,
his beautiful guts and his beautiful friend.
yeah,
And I'm also excited to see them because this page is really foregrounding, even though it's in the middle of a massively long fight scene that you've already been reading about for quite some time. And
yeah,
there are literal enormous piles of bodies, like a few pages behind this. What's really important here is the relationship between Guts and Griffith. And I think this is part of, this is one of the things that's great about this comic book is when I started, I thought it was going to be about the cool guy with the biggest sword in the world killing demons. And while it is like that,
yeah.
it is also about relationships
It's
and
about that,
feelings and
but it's
stuff.
not just about that. It
Yeah.
has actual concerns about the state of the world.
Yep.
Yeah,
And so in the middle of this fight, there's like big deal sort of like interactions happening between the characters. And in this particular page, you kind of starting on the upper right there, you have this moment where they're like supporting each other. And it's really important storyline wise. And they're so close and they're such tight buddies that they're like, I don't even have to finish my sentence. You know what we're gonna do, so we can kill this crazy monster. Whoosh.
yeah.
I assume that's the sound effect that's
Yeah,
happening
it
down
might be
here.
whoosh.
It might be whoosh. because this old Nosferatu Zod is gonna get you.
Yeah.
So, one thing that we were trying to figure out is how has this been drawn so that this old Nosferatu here, he looks. The longer I look at this, it's like an optical illusion. He looks like he is jumping out of the page at us.
Yes, he does it. The more when you mentioned it, I realized he really does look like it's a pop-up book. He's like the girl from The Ring. He's gonna come out of the image to get me.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Can you figure? I think part of it has to do with the. You mentioned this earlier. Part of it has to do with how he is overlapping the sound effects. So there's big white like lines up there.
Yeah.
Of course, those are sound effects. I don't know what they are sound effects of.
The
Um,
left one seems to disappear behind him, or that's just a tangent, but it makes him look like he's sitting on top of it. So he's on top of this extra diegetic element. But then also, I think the biggest thing is that we are looking at a page of relatively flat shading, and he's so elaborately modeled as a 3D object that's being lit, and dramatically lit that it's like he's like a solid object that has to be sticking out of this flat page somehow.
yeah, that's definitely part of it. I think the so foreshortening on his claw that is coming the most towards us,
Yeah.
the claw that is hovering over Griffith, the beautiful man with the white hair. That's so foreshortening is an art term where it's like when anything is coming towards you such that you don't see part of it behind it.
Like
The
the
large demonstrate.
like
You
see how you can't really see the rest of me?
wow, he's gonna jump out of the screen. Watch out. He could come to your house and
Ah.
sit quietly in a chair and read a large novel.
Yeah.
Watch out. So scary.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is it's foreshortening is hard to do because it's just hard to draw something. It looks very unnatural, and so unless you've got it nailed in, creating that illusion of depth is really difficult, and it's extremely like nailed in here. The bright light on the tips of his claws coming towards you are in exactly like the sort of right perspective of where you would see that if you were, holding the book, I guess. Uh, so that's I think part of what's giving him this incredible three-dimensional sort of form. But I almost think the most important part is just the sense of movement that's being portrayed throughout this piece via all of the storytelling elements. Like you start in this sort of close up with the two friends, and they tell you what they're about to do. And then you have the little panel that is like, he's rushing towards you. It's time to move. And then you
Yeah.
can see you in the bottom, you see them, they're darting away, and they're darting away because he's lunging at you. And that sense of movement out of the page towards you because of what you've been set up to understand about the action in the page is just it's so strong, and the having the art also suggests that really perfectly. It's just that there you go, it's working really well.
You mentioned the foreshortening of the arm, but I think the foreshortening of the capes here is really stunning, right?
Hmm.
They're kind of flaring out toward the viewer. And
So much more subtle but equally important. Really good point.
yeah, and they're playing a special role in the composition that Zod's body is like arched, right? This is sort of like a set of arches with the capes and then his body over the top of it. And then the elements sort of like falling toward each other, the way their feet converge toward each other. Um, right? Really trying to get across this idea of we're kind of pushing off toward different sides. And there's explosive movement, like the capes act like arrows. There's explosive movement into the depth of the page.
Yeah. Abelard,
Yeah,
see guts, that little tail thing
yeah.
between us? What is that?
So that's so Guts still has an enormously long sword in this part of the story. And so that's his scabbard. And specifically, that's the end where he can tuck his sword tip into, because the scabbard can't cover the whole sword.
Oh, he has to leave the sword naked.
Yeah, but you want to put the end in something, right, to hold it. And
So
then there's like a
it
little,
doesn't bang into your calves.
well,
That
also
would
so that
suck.
the point of it doesn't drag on the ground, probably. And then there's another, if you look just under his cape, there's a little ring that catches like midway up the sword. So
Well,
there's a lot of
this is so thoughtful.
there's meticulous attention to detail throughout this comic. I think this is something it parts of it are almost like a little like eyewitness books diagram or like if you ever read those like visual guides to Star Wars as a kid and they would show you Boba Fett and then be like, here are some of the latches and clasps of the armor.
Yeah.
Um, it's very, very detailed. So like, Guts has like a crossbow that he can shoot, and then he has the quiver of arrows on his belt the whole time. And if he just got some arrows, the buckle on the quiver will be open, and if not, it will be buckled.
Are you kidding me?
No, this is throughout the entire thing. There's such a meticulous attention to detail here. Like the way that the straps are keeping the sort of uh what's thigh armor called? Are those
You're
jams?
asking me that?
Gambesons?
I don't
And
know
then
this.
greaves and everything. Anyway, Thaldus?
Man,
Someone,
I don't know.
someone
Just
write in.
make
Okay. Anyway, but so those claps, the way that like fabric pools around them, there's so much meticulous detail here about how everything fits together, right? This kind of like practical physical reality that I think establishes a baseline for the fantastic action.
Yeah, like before I read this book, I knew Guts is like, oh, it's the guy with the comically big sword. But it's A, it's cool, and B, he earns this sword.
Yeah.
It's not just for looking at. You mentioned the like Final Fantasy guy with the big sword earlier.
Yeah.
That's just a decoratively large sword, right? Like it's just kind of
Well, I think you could say, I think it plays several different, I think there's a really good case for that giant sword, and
okay.
I'm nostalgically attached to it.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's But in the larger world of comically large swords, most of the time it's just somebody carrying a sword that would not work in reality. And this is an attempt to say, okay, I want it. It's going to be this big, but I'm gonna make it work. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna be realistic. And I think that like there's that's it's representative of the stuff in this comic as a whole. Like there's nonsense, sort of paranormal demon stuff going on everywhere.
Yeah.
But when you get into the sort of like, well, here's what it's like to be in a mercenary army, and here's what it's like to like have a friend that you are not sure is your good friend, like then it's suddenly like straight up realism.
Yeah, it's really evocative. Like it's not in this it feels really inhabited. Like the things people say to one another uh feel lived and meaningful.
Yeah, it's great, and it's pretty much incredible drawing throughout. If you haven't read this book yet, like you should read it. I should have read it earlier. I'm glad I'm reading it
Yeah.
now. It's pretty good
Well,
stuff.
like let's take should out of the equation, right? Because it
Yeah,
ultimately this is about uh, like having fun and experiencing the world and seeing art. And I think this is just like a beautiful, exciting, like it's fun, but it has so much going on. I think this is like a great book to read.
yeah. Here's the thing: we're not even 2 volumes in,
Yeah.
so presumably we'll be back in about a year with like, you
Yes.
guys can't go just look at this stuff for
Check out
volume
this.
three.
Yeah. Oh my
God,
God.
oh my God.
He's using his arm cannon.
Oh,
Yeah.
um, yeah. Is there anything else we want to say about this, or comics, or life, or anything like that?
Uh, no, I've said all I came here to say. I think this is amazing.
Yeah, if you lived in the world of Guts, what would you think would be your lot in life?
I think I would be killed by an arrow or sliced in half.
Yeah, I think I'd be killed by um some sort of bad like demonic fungus that grew in the garden that I was trying to grow a potato in. And
Yeah,
it would be cool.
it would be cool.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be Guts. I would be a guy that Guts finds and he says, "Wow, this guy's really got killed."
Man, sucks to be you, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it would be an honor.
I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Until next time, you say.
keep on dreaming.